everybody. Welcome to the program. This is AM Prime, the edition for October 26, 2022. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for being with us as usual. Let's tell you what's happening. So in some time from now, in the second hour of the program, we'll be talking with noted gerontologist Dr. Jennifer Rouse on the situation regarding the government's decision to increase the age of retirement or to extend it, particularly for workers in the public sector, workers in the public service in particular, from 60 to 65. And they say that has to do with trying to shore up the reserves at the National Insurance Board, and therefore to make sure that there's social security in hand for people who continue to retire. Well, Dr. Rouse is a gerontologist, and she's also a spokesperson for the organization representing retired persons in the country, the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Retired Persons. There's been a position taken on this issue by our trade unionist, Alva Allen, who is saying that this is an onslaught and an attack on the way of life of people when they get to these ages. What you remember, these were discussions which were mounted upon the initiative of the Ministry of Finance, Brian Manning. He'd met with a number of trade unions. Some of them agree with it, others don't. So what's the real story here? To what extent it is worth the effort? To what extent Mr. Allen is right that this is an attack on the way of life of people as they get ready to retire? So we talk with Dr. Rouse about that in the next hour of the program. We're also talking in this edition with Mr. Kelvin Morris, because he's the minority leader in the Tobago House of Assembly. He's accusing the Secretary for Infrastructure there of being arrogant and disrespectful on the award of contracts for construction work and for other infrastructure work in this style. And you just saw the leader of the PDP, that's the party in office, in the majority, Watson Duke in Tobago, challenging some of the current developments. He's asking questions about what's the value of this carnival that is costing, what the figure is. We'll get to that in moments from now. But we want to come back and begin with a discussion with Acting Superintendent Junior Benjamin. He's head of a team that is in Tobago to provide safety and security for the staging of that carnival. What's the challenge? What are the challenges, and how are they poised to meet it? Those things and more. Of course, we took you around the region a couple of times, and we share with you other features along the way. Those things and more on this edition of the program. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WASN,
the Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. only on WESN Content Capital.
it politics? What is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the right and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Welcome back to the program. We begin the discussions in this edition with Acting Superintendent Junior Benjamin. He's the head of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in Tobago. We're talking about the challenges facing this inauguration of Tobago Carnival in this time of the year, days from now. What are the challenges and how are the forces equipped and prepared to meet them? Thanks for coming on, sir.
Thank you so very much. Thanks for having me. And let me just say at this time, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Tobago Division, we are ready and prepared for the Tobago Carnival. Again, understanding what has taken place and the role that the police must play in terms of protecting and serving persons of these nations and even our visitors. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we sought to do our risk analysis of all that was needed around this time. And we recognize, given the influx of persons, which we expect to be about 20 to 40,000 persons coming to the island, that we really needed more persons in terms of personnel. And we have applied to the Commissioner of Police, and he has augmented the strength by approximately 150 police officers. Those officers, some of them are here, and most of them would be here by tomorrow, the latest. And we are already involved in different exercises to ensure safety and security on the island.
What can you talk about? What can you tell us about these exercises themselves?
Well, already, as I said, we have the IATF here, the Garden Emergency Branch. They are here. They are assisting us. Right now, we're having an increased number of police visibility in terms of exercises on the airport as well as on the seaport. So persons, we are asking them to be really patient with us, even as we seek to really ensure that level of high security alert as persons come into the island. We also have an increase in terms of exercises as relates to execution of warrants. We'll be looking at our priority offenders, especially those that might be involved in a lot of firearms, drugs, as well as even those who are involved in, larceny and robberies. These are some of our, right now, what we call our tower crimes here in Tobago. And we are ensuring that we target these priority offenders. And it is our intention, once we find them in some way involved in any form of illicit activities, we are going to ensure the full brunt of the law is executed on them.
So what do you mean? There are sort of either characteristics of people you're going to be looking for, or are there sort of known suspects or profiles that you're working with?
Right. So again, when you understand criminology, is the fact that the people who really involved in crime is a few number of persons in the society. And it is known that the normal priority offenders, they are either behind it or involved in it. And it's one of the ways in which we seek to detect crime and even seek to reduce crime, which is part and parcel of our strategic plan within the police service. So therefore, what we do, we would look at persons who have known or who are known to the police, who have committed crimes in the past. And again, we'll look at their associates, and we want to ensure that these persons, either they are continuing, if they are outside, to live above board, and if they are involved in any illicit activity, we are going to be there to ensure the full brunt of the law.
And the suspicion is, and ordinarily speaking, that there will be people coming from Trinidad, say, to Tobago with ill intent on their minds. How do you seek to protect against that?
Well, certainly what we are doing, we are working in partnership with the community, and we are also seeking to look at our statistics. The police service operates under what we call an intelligence-led, evidence-based, technology-driven strategies or solutions to crime. And therefore, we do not just go all about just picking strategies all over the place. We look at our statistics. We allow the CAPA branch to assist us in that regard. And then for Tobago, we seek to look at those hotspot areas. And this is where we're going to concentrate on the hotspot areas. And with those hotspots, there are hot times and hot products. So we are going to be focusing on those things. We are going to be looking at the priority offenders. We are going to be looking at ensuring a greater presence out there. All of these things is what is going to really cause our citizenry to, again, build their trust in the police. And again, as they continue to do that, what is going to happen, there's going to be that symbiotic relationship where they're going to help us, even when crime takes place, that they are going to share that information, and together we will solve crime together.
So the action and the force you're talking about will be concentrated in and around the Scarborough districts?
Well, again, our hotspot areas at this present time would range within the Scarborough district, would be also the Shervan district, and to a lesser extent, Crown Point and Moriah area. And again, what we have done is to zone the Tobago division, where we would have our red zone as those areas where we see a high proliferation of crime. But let me probably just start off by saying, when we look at our statistics, clearly the Tobago division probably is one of the best run division. We have noticed in terms of our statistics dated the 1st of June, I should say the 1st of January to the 15th of October, that there is a -6% in our serious crime. So therefore, it means that there is a reduction in our crimes. When we look at our statistics across all the stations, at least 4 of our stations has shown a decrease in its crimes. Only 2 show an increase. So therefore, I'm saying in Tobago, a person coming in should not really have a problem there. But still, when we look at the number of crimes, we see the areas where there is a greater proliferation of crime. And those are the areas that we would target as the hotspot areas. And the areas in particular where we see most of those crimes generated are those areas that we are going to look and see if we can increase the number of police officers that would be in that area, so that there is a greater visibility, and that visibility we believe will yield to again a reduction in the crime.
All right, so Scarborough, Shervan, you say, well, that's close enough. I mean, one is adjacent to the other, but you say Moriah. Why? Because so there's some activity there that is going to be so there'll be a focus in Moriah because they will have a piece of this action concerning the carnival.
Right. I said Moriah because when we look at our statistics, clearly Moriah, even though it is not one that has a large number of offenses, when we compare the amount of offenses we've seen this year against last year, there is an increase. So Moriah is one of those stations that we have seen an increase, all right, by nearly closer about 15, let's say between 10 to 15% more offenses. However, it is not at a large number, but I'm saying any increase, it means as a leader in charge of, the police service here, I want to get those numbers down. So therefore, I'm saying we are going to ensure again that based on the strategies that we put out, that we also assist Moriah in reducing some of those crimes, so that at least they would be one of those that can testify of a reduction in crime in that station district.
Do you have any handle on what is driving it, the increase that you're seeing there?
Well, again, what you recognize is that the Moriah area, we have quite a number of persons that do a lot of planting and so on. So you have the normal robberies, I shouldn't say robberies, but more so larcenies and so forth. And people who their waka is stolen, different things like that. So what we're trying to do is sensitize the public to what we call, public or target hardening. And by target hardening, what we want to do is really just encourage persons that if we do some very simple things, by at least these things that you have outside, we believe that Tobago is a place where you could just leave your waka downstairs and like tomorrow it's going to be there. No, we're saying at least put it in a place where it is properly secured. You can save yourself and save the police some statistics by just seeking to do some very simple things that we believe can help you and help the police as well.
Intelligence-led, technology-driven, you said. Can you get inside of that for us when you talk about being technology-driven?
Certainly. So we are saying that in terms of the type of exercises that we're doing, we want to ensure that when we talk about intelligence-led, it means that we are looking at the 3 eyes. We want to look into the community and interpret the information that we have. We want to ensure that that information that we interpret that it influences the right people, and then that the right people, when they are influenced, can impact the community. So that's the 3 I's that we look at, and that is what we want to do as we gather the information and the necessary information from the public. We want to ensure that we influence the right persons within the organization so that we can continue to impact the economy or impact the community in a positive way. Again, when we talk about technology driven, we want to use the latest technology in assisting us in ensuring that we can do that, whether it is from a fingerprint standpoint, when we go out and crime scenes, ensure that we have those additional infrastructure in place so that we can take prints and find out who are the persons who commit offenses. And it ranges all the way from even the body cams that we have to ensure that the police secure themselves while they are out on the scenes, so that, again, the police cannot find themselves in situation where they are questioned. And even if it is, at least we'll be able to vindicate ourselves in terms of our action. All of these are technology-driven things that the police use so that we can help to solve crime and also to ensure that level of safety and security in the island.
Well, you say that overall there's been a decrease in serious crime, but there have been a couple of I don't want to use the term spectacular, but a couple of murders in the of other kinds of serious crime on the island in the last couple of months. How do you explain that?
Yeah, and as I said, in the midst of the reduction in crime, there are still those that we have seen an increase in. We have seen an increase in our murders, and I think that is so important that we take an overall picture. When we look at our statistics, presently we have about 9 murders. Out of the 9 murders, when we break that down, we recognize about 4 of those murders is based on what we call altercations. And about 2 is based on domestic violence, another 2 is based on robberies, and 1 gang-related. So certainly, when you take a breakdown of that, you recognize that Tobago is not a place where people just shooting up the place and killing persons all over the place, and that sort of thing. You recognize that most of the problems stem from persons not being able to solve problems and, being able to have that, what I like to use the word, that emotional intelligence, where we are able to really sit down and evaluate, look at yourself and control yourself so as to deal with things in a better manner. So we are intending to, it's our intention really to go into the communities and to work with our communities, teach our young people, starting with the schools, going into the schools and really talking to our young people how to do some more problem solving. How do you have greater control over yourself? Understanding the consequences of your action, because sometimes people can just naturally just move out of emotions and find themselves out of control. So those are the type of things. When we look at the murder situation, over last year was 7 murders, but in 2020 we had 10 murders, and in 2019 another 10 murders. And 9 is still under 10, so I still think that we are within the range, and we are hoping that we're not going to pass 10 at all before the year. So we hope that that's it.
Acting Superintendent Junior Benjamin, thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, and to all your listeners as well. Have a wonderful day.
You too. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we take a quick look around the region before we move to our next discussion here on the program, so stay with us.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Today we're talking about cosmetic medicine, and we're on set at Relax Med Aesthetics.
We are like famous all over the world for this glow. You could in an airport, you could spot a Caribbean over there. Oh my God, she's from Trinidad.
She's definitely from Trinidad.
Yeah. So I felt like that was something that we needed to feel like we belonged, and we needed to feel empowered that our skin color was really important.
Step we've been waiting for is the chemical peel, right? So I'm gonna start applying.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Up ahead on the program, Minority Leader in the Tobago House of Assembly, Mr. Kelvin Morris, he's describing one of the secretaries of the Tobago House of Assembly, Trevor James, as arrogant, bold-faced and disrespectful. We'll get to that moments from now. Well, let's take a quick look around the region. We start with Greendot, where they're saying that the member of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, they have noted that there's a need for greater collaboration in that sub-regional sector. We have a report from Greendot's GIS.
Prime Minister Honorable Dickon Mitchell is pleased with the reception given to him by member heads of the OECS after the delivery of his maiden speech and the general discussions that followed during the recently concluded 72nd meeting of the OECS Authority held recently in Montserrat. During an interview with the Government Information Service, PM Mitchell says the discussions surrounded benefits for OECS countries within the region, with areas of focus on the ECCB and the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. The Grenadian leader says the OECS needs to focus its efforts on tackling the issues that are before them if they are to move forward.
Things like our Supreme Court, Central Bank, Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority. To some extent, I think the population of the OECS take these things for granted because they've been around so long and they work so well. But we can't take them for granted because the strength really is in or combined and unified action. But crucially, it also recognizes that we need to do a lot more to foster OECS integration and to deepen that process and to use our collective strengths to tackle some of the big challenges we face, like air travel. And we actually had a town hall with the citizens of Montserrat on the final day, and air travel was a major issue.
PM Mitchell says there are also common challenges domestically facing member states, which needs to be addressed. He advises that member states should take a regional approach towards common issues if they are to come to some common solution.
The issue of the hemorrhaging of our nurses. All of us are facing the challenges of our nurses leaving en masse. In the case of Greendot, I think we've lost 75 already for the year. There's a possibility of another 25 or so leaving. And the same situation exists in Montserrat. The same situation exists in St. Kitts, St. Vincent, St. Lucia. We're relying on Cuban assistance, for example. So it means it's a common problem. And there's an opportunity then for us to find a common regional solution, or at least mitigation measures to address it. So it reemphasized that the challenges we face are similar, if not the same. And therefore, our ability to solve them will in fact require us to take a regional and not just a domestic or national approach to them. And so I think it was very important for me and the other heads to particularly given that we have relatively, in the case of St. Lucia, in the case of St. Kitts and Nevis, in the case of Greendot, new prime ministers. So obviously we bring, in a sense, a relatively fresh perspective. And in my case, particularly coming from almost straight out of the private sector.
Prime Minister Mitchell says notable of mention coming out of the meeting is the fact that there are now 3 very young prime ministers in the mix to incorporate fresh ideas that will aid in the further strengthening of the authority.
We are relatively young compared to some of the other leaders, both within the OECS and in CARICOM. And I think given the youthfulness of our population, I think we serve as examples to the young population that all is not lost. and there's a genuine opportunity for us to reimagine what politics looks like, what engaging with our people look like, and what setting goals and aspirations and going after them look like. So I think from that perspective, I certainly think the people of the OECS expects of us that we will make a reconcerted effort to truly try and address some of the challenges we face as a people so that we can improve the lives of the citizens of the OECS.
All right, so we come now to our discussion with Mr. Kelvin Morris. He's the minority leader in the Tobago House of Assembly on two issues. One, he's challenging the swift decision of the award of a contract by the THA within 24 hours of submission. And then he's also describing one of the secretaries as bold-faced, arrogant, and disrespectful. That's Trevor James over an issue about the attempt to construct a stage in the sea, about which there's been much pushback. Mr. Morris, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning, Andy. Good to see you. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, so let's deal with the first issue first. The issue of the award of this. You say the Guinness Book of World Records will be looking at this. How is it that an approval for anything could take place within 24 hours? We're talking about a contract that had to be evaluated and assessed and so on and so on.
So, of course, Andy, you would have heard very early parts of the falling out of Mr. Duke and Mr. Augustine. Mr. Duke made some astonishing accusations where he did alert the population that there perhaps may have been some deals made with contractors in Trinidad. And what we are seeing playing out is those deals coming to the fore, where you're seeing contractors outside of Tobago being awarded contracts in the most suspicious manner. You're seeing contractors who have had no previous relationship with the Tobago House of Assembly being awarded contracts in record-breaking time. Of course, you'd remember the political leader of the PNM did come to the population and did inform us that a contract was given out to a roofing company, a company with no previous track record of paving, and that they would have submitted a proposal on the 30th of August 30th, and they were able to get a letter of award by the 6th of September. And what we have recognized in this situation is that a company would have submitted a proposal on the 6th of October, which was a Thursday. They were able to receive a letter of award on the 7th of October, which is a Friday. And by the 8th of October, they were on site.
That's a Saturday.
That's a Saturday, ready, mobilized to do work. And we are talking about a company that is Trinidad-based, that was able to mobilize workers, mobilize equipment, and they were on site all within the space of basically 24 hours. You just received a letter of award, and that says to me, any layman would assume that that person would have had to have the assurance beforehand that they were going to get the job. And that speaks to a whole situation of collusion and corruption. And I want to put it on the record that it is not that we are saying that companies from Trinidad cannot or not do work in Tobago. In fact, companies from Trinidad has always provided services in Tobago. We are Trinidad and Tobago, one country, and the opportunities, of course, must be spread apart. But what we are saying, for jobs that Tobagoans can do, because of the uniqueness of our economy here in Tobago, where the construction sector outside of the THA forms one of the larger blocks of employment, then of course it would make sense to allow for those opportunities to be given in some measure to Tobagoans first. And where Tobagoans cannot supply those services, of course, we procure the services of our brothers and sisters in Trinidad.
So that's not the case, because I want to go back to what the Prime Minister would have said about the very issue. And he said that it is because in some cases the contractors in Tobago are believed to be, if not known to be, supporters of the PNM.
So what we are seeing is a blacklisting of contractors. It started, of course, the ongoing matter where this chief secretary would have accused the former administration of awarding contracts improperly. And they are doing some audits, and without concrete findings, they have decided that they're not going to work with these contractors who they perhaps believe to be supporters of the PNM. And these contractors are the contractors with the capacity to do the job. So what they would have done is start by demonizing and discrediting these contractors as to allow them to have an opportunity to now give contracts outside of Tobago to their favored friends. And we are seeing this playing out in the most scandalous way, where in this scenario, as I said, the Guinness Book of World Records will perhaps have some interest here, because I am not aware that in Trinidad and Tobago we have the kind of efficiency where you can receive a proposal one day, and then within 24 hours, all the administrative and technical evaluations were done, letter of award prepared, and a contractor could be on site the next day. That has to be something that perhaps is quite outstanding in this country.
What is the nature of the work?
So these are road paving works. As far as I understand, it's road paving from Smithfield to Dutch Fort. And one of the things that is also interesting, Andy, is that they've handed out 4 contracts, and all under the guise of emergency works, claiming that these roads are required for the upcoming carnival, which is a couple of days away. As far as I understand, there are only 2 of those roads that have been started. The other 2 roads remain without mobilization. They have not started as yet. So the question has to be as well, if the works were emergency works for carnival, and the carnival would come and the carnival would go by Sunday, then those contracts that have not yet started, are you now going to cancel those contracts? Because you would have came and you would have said to the people of Tobago, you were doing these works on the premise that you required the roads for carnival. And we kept saying as the minority that we are confident that the carnival can happen without the expediency of these roads. And we are confident that there are processes that must happen. And I would tell you, one of the challenges we have with this current administration is that they seem to have no regard for tendering process. They seem to have no regard for procurement. And what they are doing, they are hand-picking contractors, which is against the law.
So to what extent do you think the administration is doing this based on its presumed strength on the ground in Tobago, with control of 14 of the 15 divisions in the assembly, or districts in the assembly? And that they have the backing of the people behind them.
Well, the feeling on the ground is one of disappointment at this point in time, even embarrassment in some quarters, because you have even their own supporters who would have bought into their mantra of transparency, accountability, fairness across the board, opportunities for all, and also giving, because they campaign on a mantra, Tobago for Tobagonians. And now they feel hoodwinked, because they're seeing where, in a situation where these contracts and these works can be done by Tobago-based contractors, the Tobago-based contractors are being overlooked. And people are at the point of concern, because the very things that this administration seemed to accuse the former administration of, they are doing it, and they're doing it worse. So it is really a sense of cynicism on the ground. People are disappointed, people are embarrassed, and now people are wondering. People are actually having buyer's regret at this time. People are really, really disappointed on the ground.
And you would say it doesn't help. I mean, you won't lament what is happening. You have the leader of the party that is in is in the seat in Tobago, attacking his own colleagues by some of what they're doing. How does that play across the island?
Well, I remember former Chief Secretary Mr. London once saying, if shark come out of the water and tell you, you know, shark in there, you have to believe them. Because if the leader of the PDP is the one who would have first opened up, would have first, you know, exposed this administration and their ill intent, then we can only, as we now see playing out in our eyes, we have to believe what he was saying. And he would have made some startling accusations that persons within the executive council, senior members of the executive council of the THA, would have been incentivized to give contracts to persons outside of Tobago. And when we see the manner in which these contracts are now being given out, one have to question and one have to ask the question whether what he was saying have some kind of truth to it.
You think at this point the shine on Mr. Augustine has come off?
Well, what Tobagonians are seeing is that what Mr. Augustine says and what Mr. Augustine do are complete variance. This is a man that would have promised contractors. He's on record telling contractors, you have nothing to worry. Even if we don't agree with how the contracts were given out, we will pay you all. And in the same breath, gave them a date of June the 24th, by which time he would honor all outstanding contracts. And to date, this is the very same chief secretary that has turned around and decided that he will not pay these contractors. So no monies has been paid to these contractors, although they would have completed works, verifiable works. And this is a chief secretary that has continued to pretend that he cares about corruption and he cares about transparency. But when you look into the way how his administration is going about the business of procurement and tendering, it leaves more questions than answers.
All right, so let's come now to your description of Mr. James as Secretary for Infrastructure's, quote, arrogant, bold-faced, and disrespectful. Let's talk about that.
Well, that again speaks to the level of, you know, disrespect for the rule of law. Here it is. You have a secretary in the face of a lawful authority saying to you, some of the works that you are doing requires our approval. And because it requires our approval, you need to come to us, let us have the discussion, let us go through the process. And this secretary would say, no, I don't care about that. And I'm paraphrasing here. We have Carnival coming up in a couple of weeks, and by the hook or the crook, we're going to get it done. So we don't care about the law. We don't care about the lawful authority. And I find that highly disrespectful. I find that out of place, out of order. And somebody like that, you have to watch them with pokey eyes. You have to watch them with focused lens, because somebody like that is not to be trusted. Somebody who would disregard the law in such a way is one that you really have to ask the question. And somebody who would have said and took the oath to hold the Constitution and the law, and he's now disregarding the law in that kind of way. I find that untenable.
And this had to do with discussions around the construction of this stage in the sea. And he's reported in the papers here saying that he was not aware that a certificate of environmental clearance was necessary for that.
That is untruth. And I would call him out on that, because he's on record as saying that they have works to be done. And his division is speaking with the Division of Agriculture and Environment, as well as the EMA. But in the meantime, they have work to be done, and they would do it because the Carnival is in a couple of weeks. So how could you say in one breath that your division is in contact with the lawful authorities, but in the same breath saying that you don't know that you have to have these kind of clearance. And there's a saying that ignorance of the law is no excuse for breaking the law, even though. So I find it quite confusing. And even when you checked with EMA, at the time when he said his division was in talks with them, they had no kind of conversation. So yet again, you have to ask yourself, can we trust the words of this secretary?
Because he's saying here that he reported as saying here, what we are trying to do is to host a carnival in a few weeks. We at the Assembly are trying to execute these works in short order, and sometimes as a state agency, we believe it might be challenging to go through every single step that is required. If that has to be done, then we won't be able to accomplish all that we set out to do.
So you understand what I'm saying? So he's basically saying, by the hook or the crook, we're going to get it done. We don't care what corners we have to cut. And they see this probably have too much bureaucracy. One of them being that I have to apply for an EMA certificate of clearance. And I'm not going to go through that because that would take too long and I need to finish these works. But we are saying the law is the law, and until the law remains what it is, you must follow the law. And we can't have public officials so brazenly breaking the law. That is not good governance. And when you look at it, it speaks to a level of disrespect for transparency as well. At no point in time, we as Tobagonians are being told what is the cost of this job that is being done, who is the contractor doing this job. We don't know if it's in-house, if it's out-house, how it was procured. There's no kind of request for proposal publicly. So Tobagonians were left clueless. All we were seeing are boulders being piled, and there has been no kind of proper study. We know that coastal works are some of the most sensitive works, and once you're interfering with the natural coastal environment, then it requires different studies. I remember at ETEC, when we were treating with Magdalena and doing the breakwater there, we had to bring in an international firm who had to study the coastal environment for over a year. We had to treat with all the stakeholders, from the fishermen in Lambo to all the community groups around, because this has an impact on all of society. And therefore, I cannot understand that something as sensitive as this, you would just decide out of the dead of the night to just take up excavator and other heavy equipment and just go and interfere with the Tobago coastline in that kind of way, especially when we are seeing the kind of aggressive erosion of the coastline in Tobago.
So what's the latest on it? The project, it has been halted, it has been suspended? Or?
No, well, I told you this guy is bold-faced, and he, in fact, rather than halt the project and have the conversations, what we saw was an acceleration of the project, and now the project would have been paved. So we have a paved road out in the sea. And I don't know after the carnival what we're going to do with that paved road out in the sea. But what I'm going to say is that I am hoping that whatever comes after the carnival, this secretary is held accountable for the destruction of what is to come, because we know that side of the Tobago Atlantic is facing serious coastal erosion, to the point that we have Scarborough Sec, which is a little further down, that is in threat of being run into the sea. The sea is taking back the lands on that side of Tobago. So I am very concerned. The people of Tobago is concerned, and we are calling on this chief secretary to rein in what appears to be a runaway secretary that feels that he can do whatsoever he wants.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Morris, Kelvin Morris, the minority leader in the Tobago House of Assembly. Thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you, Andy. Take care.
All right, as we head up to the top of this hour, let's take you around the region again. This time we go to St. Lucia, where the story is that the Deputy Senate President filled in on the last sitting of that House following the process of electing a new Senate President, because that was postponed. We have a report here.
The election of a new Senate President to succeed Stanley Felix was postponed on Thursday, owing partly to the absence of key Senate member Lisa Joyer due to COVID-19 health and safety protocols. The Senate President is elected by members of the upper house. Just before the start of the latest Senate sitting on Thursday, the media flocked to Senator Alvina Reynolds, the lawmaker widely tipped to get the nod.
Can you tell us anything about the new, when we'll get an announcement of the new president of the Senate?
I can't speak to that yet, unfortunately. But all I know is happening this morning. We are swearing in a new senator, and then and that is what's going to happen this morning.
However, while she declined to talk about her prohibitive status, the legislator revealed that the process had been deferred, but that Deputy President Dale Lee would take the chair in keeping with the Constitution and the standing orders.
This will not happen this morning, as we just found out that Senator Joyer has been exposed to COVID, so that we'll be deferring voting for a president this morning. Yes.
So that is holding.
The deputy president will be presiding today.
So
yes.
We have to wait for a new president.
Yes, we have to wait for a new president. The Senate, we will vote for our new president. Yes. No, it's when the Prime Minister presents new bills from the AG's office, then we'll have a subsequent seating. But I can't speak to that right now. But that is what is happening this morning.
Reynolds underscored the importance of following procedure, given that the entire deliberative body is involved in the nomination and the selection of a Senate president.
The Senate will vote for a president. That's procedural. We must go according to the standing orders. The Senate will vote for a president. Seconded, someone will put forward the vote. It will be seconded. That's the process. So until at such time, you will have to wait to find out who the president will be.
Deputy President Lee's availability to fill the role ensured that the deliberations of the Senate and work of the government and people of St. Lucia were unencumbered.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and the security interest in the movable property bill be read a third time and passed.
Observers say Thursday's deliberations are the norm and not the exception. House Speaker Claudius Francis, during an October 2021 straight-up show, explained that history is replete with examples of Deputy Senate Presidents signing off on the passage of law.
I know in 2015, for example, Deputy President of the Senate, equivalent to the House Deputy Speaker, presided over the actual opening of Parliament, presided during sit-ins of the Senate. Former Senate Deputy President Charmaine Gardner, between 1990 and 1992, presided over the Senate on various occasions, and at one point in time for a long stretch during then President Henry Girody's illness.
Francis was responding to the leader of the opposition, Alan Chasney's claim that deputy presiding officers were not essential but nothing more than chair warmers to allow the substantive office holders a bathroom break to relieve themselves during marathon sittings. But Francis pointed out that the deputy presiding officers are vital and have the constitutional authority to oversee entire proceedings. Proponents say Thursday was a prime example. Chasney has taken flak from critics who hold him responsible for the non-appointment of a deputy House Speaker for almost 5 years during his tenure as government leader. Joachim Duplessis, HTS News Force.
This is AM Prime here. We will take a break. We have news at the top of the hour. When we come back, a discussion with Dr. Jennifer Rouse, gerontologist, on the decision by the government to seek to increase the age of retirement in the public service from 60 to 65. Stay with us.
Your WESN News on the Hour. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. SMEs to access long-term guaranteed loan facility. Labrie residents stage protest. PDP leader questions whether Tobagonians benefiting from a carnival. And internationally, 6 killed as Israel targets militants in West Bank raid. Now for the details. By the end of November 2022, small and medium enterprises in this country could begin to access a $500 million long-term guaranteed loan facility backed by the government. This announcement was made by the finance minister recently. This offer will also be available at local commercial banks. Residents of Labrie and its environs staged a massive protest throughout the constituency on Tuesday morning. WSN understands the protest was against rising fuel and food prices, deplorable roads and unemployment. The opposition UNC, who was in strong support of the action, said this was all part of the untold hardship that this Rowley-led regime has brought on citizens, and it is time he dissolve parliament and call election. PDP leader Watson Duke is calling on the THA Executive Council to say how much of the $17.5 million being spent on Tobago's inaugural carnival is actually benefiting the island. In a statement via his Facebook page, Duke questions if the money was carefully budgeted. He said that the THA must be able to say that. He also wants to know whether a profit is being made and if Tobagonians would benefit.
They must be able to say to that how much of that $17.5 million remain in Tobago. More than that, how much profit is being made from that carnival show, $7.5 million. Because even though profit is being made from it, then you would have taken Tobagonians' money and you would have wiped your behind with it and flushed it down the toilet. It's of no use to Tobagonians. I want to make it absolutely clear. If the Tobago Self-Assembly cannot make a profit from this, then they have taken the people's money, wiped their behind and flushed it down the toilet.
And internationally, 5 Palestinians, including at least 3 gunmen, have been killed in a major Israeli raid against a militant group in the occupied West Bank. A 6th Palestinian was shot dead by Israeli troops who were attacked with stones in the protests against the raid, Palestinian medical sources say. The operation in the northern city of Nablus targeted the recently formed Lions Den group. The group killed an Israeli soldier in a shooting earlier this month. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to the program. Well, our next guest is Dr. Jennifer Rouse. She's a gerontologist. She was the director of the Division of Aging at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, and she's also a spokesperson often for the Trinidad and Tobago Association for Retired Persons. The discussion centers around this. Here's this. The Attorney General, Reginald Amor, has vowed to bring a bill this parliamentary year to change the retirement age from 60 to 65 years old in the public service. He said that in the Senate, the budget debate on Friday, while the government's official website still displays an undated article quoting the finance minister, Colin Mbea, as having denied any plans to raise the retirement age in his budget speech, he had hinted at a rise by saying a higher retirement age would already be existing in Jamaica and Barbados. Repeated auditors' reports from the National Insurance Board had spoken of a shrinking pool of contributors alongside more claimants. The minister in the Ministry of Finance, Brian Manning, had held discussions with several trade unions on the topic of increasing the retirement age earlier this year. One trade union leader has said, however, that any such plan is a bold-faced attack on the quality of life for people at this stage in the game. Dr. Rouse has agreed to talk with us about that. Good to see you.
Morning to you. Morning to all our viewers and listeners. This discussion regarding not just the increase in the retirement age, that was a little later, but this whole discussion on pension reform, let's put it that way, is not recent. That started since in 1997. I'm just doing this little plug to see what led up to this.
Yes.
Around 1997, at the time, Bacon Woodrow D'Souza, which is the auditors, a firm of auditors, had a situation where, at the time, it wasn't called Senior Citizens Grant; it was called Old Age Pension.
Yes.
And it is still a means-tested program. Once you qualify and meet the 3 criteria of being a national, having no other income coming in, and that you have lived in the country at least 20 years prior to your turning 65. So when they were getting the quantum that was given to old age pensioners was never indexed to any instrument to say what justified that quantum. And it turned out now, and we have to remember, in 1972 is when NIS began. So by 1997, when Bacon Woodrow wrote this very in-depth report, the term that was used in that report was they were seeing a poverty trap, where when persons who were contributors to the NIS at the time, between 1972 and 1997, at that time, some were retiring, some had begun retiring already, and they were getting a less quantum, a smaller quantum than the old age pensioners, some of whom never worked, like housewives and whatever, because you know what the eligibility was. And there was a rumbling began then. So to kind of quiet the noise and level the playing field, it was coming out of that report that one of the areas that they looked at was, well, let's make the NIS, and at the time, the contributions of the NIS to each employee matched what their quantum was to go home with. And therefore, there was no issue. But when this poverty trap came, and they then raised the NIS arbitrarily to the 3,000 that we now enjoy, that will make pensioners feel, well, a little more comfortable knowing that now there's a baseline that you cannot go below. And that was where the 3,000 came. And then the trade unionists also took issue where what was happening with the surplus to the fund, because somebody who worked just barely making now the 750 minimum requirements to get a pension for life based on the contribution, they might have worked just 14 years. And somebody who worked from since it began in 1972 right up along the train, they were getting the same 3,000. So where was that surplus going? And that's when NIB had to come into the discussion to let them know that there are other benefits that they give, 23 in all, that they give to persons means tested, but that is where that surplus had to subsidize those benefits.
Is it 23?
And that quieted
23 other benefits? 23 benefits?
23 benefits NIB gives, but people don't know that. They just know like maternity, the funeral, and what we call, but there are other grants. There's even a booklet that they have for distribution. So, and I want to make this point clear. It redounds to the persons who are in the NIB, in the NIS, that they must check every so often with their contribution statement, because now it is even digital and you can get it very quickly, because the responsibility is with that employee to track, to see that all the contributions are being submitted by the employer. Because of that reason, where some people change jobs and all of that, and by the time they reach retirement thinking that everything is okay, then they realize there are gaps in their contributions, and the firm that they used to work with maybe 30 years ago has closed down and the employer had never submitted. And it is all those little rumblings are inside this pot. And now we are in a negative growth rate. Less contributors to the fund in terms of warm bodies. And also, we have now the suggestion being made, recommendation being made by NIB, where this 3,000 needs to be frozen now, because the benefits, which were all the time level to match the quantum of what you're taking home became out of whack when they made this 3,000 baseline, so that the contributions were not sufficient to sustain this. And then came longer life expectancy, less people in the workplace contributing to the fund, and this is where we are. So now in the notes that you sent, or the recommendations from the trade union, I think it was the NUGFW General Secretary, where he put there, where now the conversation is saying, should we now go in accordance with what the IMF suggested in their recommendations and reduce that 3,000 now of the NIB to level it and therefore make the contributions match, or NIB would now have to increase the contributions of each worker because to fill that gap, so that it will be sustained over time. Because if it continues as it is, ad infinitum, it will not be able to sustain paying the pensioners by the year, I think it is 2040. Yeah, between 2030, 40, it will be becoming very compromised.
That is even
That's where we are.
Yeah, that is even if we move to the stage where public servants will be required to work to 65. And I can tell you, well, the NUGFW, their position is that they had been calling for that for a long time, because there was some kind of staggered retirement in certain brackets of workers. Some maybe retired at 60, some at 63, and some at 65. They wanted standardized. But it is, I think it's Alva Allen. He's from the National Workers Union. He put out this statement saying that is an attack on people's way of life and so on and so on. So
there's another catch to that, Andy. Because what the union had negotiated some years ago, it could be between like the 70s, when you remember the oil boom and things were looking up, that they had negotiated and received this particular term of this particular benefit for the public officers. That is the established ones.
Yes.
Where if you worked 33 and a third years, you can leave and retire and get the same quantum you would have received had you worked up to age 60. So there are public officers that do retire from the age of, let us say, if they reach 55 or 56, because they started working from the time they were 18.
Yeah, because that was a magic number. When I got into the workforce, that was 33 and a third. People look forward to that. So, but you're saying, so what has happened with that now? That is not as
No, that is still operating. Yeah. So some workers take that. Now here, what could happen with this conversation building momentum of wanting to increase the retirement age to 65. The trade unions have to be involved in this discussion. That's where the tripartite comes. But what it is doing, or could do, those who are in the service, because the baby boomers, the last cohort of baby boomers are going to retire in 2024. And they are looking forward to those years to leave. They don't want to remain. And this is another ethic that we have to understand. The ethic of the baby boomers is they would want to leave at the age 60 or before, like 55, so that they can have some leisure and pleasure and enjoy that their pension and their retirement, because they will, most of them take a lump sum and a slightly reduced pension. So in the conversation, what is happening now, when we look at who is going to be coming up in from 2025, that will be Generation X, and then the millennials. And this is an important point that we must make, just like how when any policy decision is being made that will impact the populace, they are supposed to find out and work out the social impact, because the millennials who are coming right up, that is Generation X and Y, those are the ones now that are born after 1986. They are not, when you speak with them, hear what has been understood now from research being done on the millennials. They are not looking for long-term service awards.
Long service awards.
No, they will be working an average of about 20 jobs in their life, in their work life, because contract appeals to them. They don't want to put their navel string buried into one organization. So their attitude to labor is one that is transient and portable. They are not boxed in to any country. So the term that was used is that with the millennials, they're not tethered to territory. They are tethered to the journey through their work life. So they are, and these are my nephews, some of my nephews, they tell you outright, I am working towards retiring between 45 and 50. Are they being involved in the conversation? Because if you recall, Andy, when France decided that they are going to raise the retirement age to 67, who you think was burning down Paris? It was the youth. Because they were saying, why are these, as they call them, geezers, why are they usurping our space when we want jobs, we are qualified, and we want to move up in our social upward mobility, but our spaces are being usurped by the older folks staying on longer. So you understand what is happening in this whole matrix. There are a lot of rumblings at all different levels. So in reading the report that from Mr. Alves, I think it was, you are seeing where a possibility or recommendation is being given again from Ministry of Finance and their conversation with the IMF officials that maybe we could now level this NIS amount, this quantum of 3,000, to match a max of 80% of the minimum wage, which will reduce this quantum by 900. And that is volatile for pensioners because when you look in the Caribbean, most of the pensioners, their only source of income is pension.
Yes.
They don't have auxiliary support. Follow? So, and what Trinidad and Tobago has to understand, we are one of the few, I don't even know of any more, but I could be wrong, that have a dual pension. We have both the pension, public officers who are established the monthly pay, they have a non-contributory pension for life. And then they have the NIS, which they contributed to. So most of the Caribbean, they only have the pension, old age pension. So when this changed in name and entitled to Senior Citizens Grant, and then very arbitrarily, and 500 will be added. Usually it is near either election time or whatever, so it was always deemed like patronage. And the 500 would be added, but with no rationale as to why is it going up by this amount. When what we need is like a quality of life index to peg the quantum to what would sustain an older person. But also remember that the government also has other subsidized like CDAP and so that also feed into the life of a pensioner. So it is not just Senior Citizens Grant, but should they want to access all the other benefits that are eligible, that they will be eligible for, that is where a minister and a Ministry of Finance looks. What if every one of the nearly 120,000 Senior Citizen Grant recipients were to access all the things, whether it's free bus pass, free ferry, free the medications that they get, wheelchairs, assistive devices, all the slew of things that they can get. If they were to access all, the government has to have the money there that will cover the subsidy on that. Because remember, for every person that is getting a free pass or that is getting something to make them better off, somebody else is being worse off.
Yeah,
because it means they're getting that money from somewhere else.
I was in a discussion some weeks ago in which a man was saying, well, all he exists on is the NIS 3,000, and he worked it out to $30 a day, and he says nobody could live on that.
Precisely. And that is where the beneficiary will be looking, you see? But there are also other things where they could access food card, they could access, because all these are means-tested programs. So it is a question of knowing or finding out or being told, like on a public awareness campaign, all the various things that could supplement that. Because if you're just going to be using that 3,000, it will not be enough, especially for medical things. That's why the CDAP helps some. And many have now grown, because when a nation is said to be healthy, or if you had to use an index to say that we are a healthy nation, it will be how many people are dropping off of CDAP. But in this nation, as we know, diabetes and all these chronic non-communicable diseases are going through the roof.
Yeah.
So CDAP now is going to be full-blown very soon.
Yeah,
if everybody keeps accessing.
I get a sense of what you're saying is that there has to be much more sort of substantive discussions on the broader implications of this.
Definitely. And including the youth, the younger people, because remember, in the workplace, there are now 5 generations working in a workplace now, you know. I'm not saying in all workplaces, but they are eligible to work in all, because contract work has set in and is running parallel now to the other established, and this is both in private sector and public sector.
It's become endemic in the public sector.
What is?
Contract work.
Yes, exactly. And the whole question of I came in with a 3-year contract doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to leave after 3 years, because they may roll it over and renew, and that has now become a staple. As you said, the correct word is endemic now in the system, because that is not age-based, but that is skills-based, where you are looking for resources. And what has been happening, remember, at the age of 60, even if you are in the public service and have been retained after you have reached the mandatory retirement age and have been retained because your particular part of the of your particular job is needed, and there's no other expert around in the swirl to put somebody there, or to invite somebody, especially with the institutional memory, that public officer will have stopped contributing now to NIS because they have reached their mandatory retirement. They will not be making contributions. They will be getting their NIS pension, and then they will be rehired as contract workers. Where only, and another thing, Andy, the NIS is not contributions of the employee alone. It is also of the employer.
Yes.
So when the employee stops at 60 and is rehired on contract, the employer still has to pay benefits just in case there's any injury to that, because there's a benefit for that, like how you would have workmen's compensation.
So you believe that maybe the good thing about going to Parliament with this is that it will open up the space for more discussions on what is required, the implications?
It cannot be done where most of policy is made in a room, you know, with policy makers, with technocrats and then impact, and then the outcome is only told after. This requires consultation, because it is a discussion that started off, as I said, with the poverty trap, trying to equalize what is happening with this means-tested program, pension and the public officers. And now it has reached now a volatile, almost crisis stage, where because of the life expectancy now being long, and mind you, the IMF, and this is from my research when I was doing my thesis, the IMF had officials here in Trinidad in 2002 and spoke with the key stakeholders, including trade union leaders. That's when they raised the discussion and said they are recommending that, not that they recommended, they are seeing where that non-contributory pension being enjoyed by the established workers of the government, the public sector, is unsustainable. You heard where I said it, 2002. This is now 20 years later. Ago. And that was thrown out because, you know, it was like scoffed at, how don't even think about going there. But this is a non-contributory pension. The established monthly paid are entitled to because of the negotiations that were made. Not expecting that the life expectancy now would be an average of 78 years for males and 81 years for females. Trinidad now has, I think, over 200 centenarians. And we are going up the chain, and you are entitled to this contribution of pension without having contributed to it, like 5% out of your salary. Now, should that be negotiated for. You realize now where we are with some of the negotiations that are already in arrears. Some are now lodged with the industrial court. If it is, and these are some of the things the trade unionists have to look at, if even they are negotiating for whatever might be their percentage, they have to understand and start looking at what if, because government, the public sector is the biggest employer, what if we had to negotiate for government established workers to now contribute to a pension plan, whether it is a defined pension benefit or contributory one, then it means the quantum that they will be asking for has to be one where it could include, it will cater for a deduction from the employee towards this fund, and the government will also have to match it. That's how a pension plan works.
All right, we're gonna have
to continue ad infinitum with a non-contributory pension, and we live in past 100 because it's now the life span of a human being now is 120.
Yeah.
So
all right, we're gonna.
It is, yes, so I hope I whet your appetite and give you some food for thought.
Certainly. We want to thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there.
You're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jennifer Rouse.
Thank you.
All right, just before we go, let me just tell you what's on the front pages of these newspapers. That's the Trinidad and Tobago Newsday, well, the action in Tobago. What are you doing, however? That's the front page story. The UNC wants the national security meeting after 16 murders in the weekend. And on the front page of the Newsday Tobago, more action about carnival in Tobago. Judges agree the carnival is we, they say. There's other things there. But before we go, let's just tell you to watch this. This is the UK artist Trini Boy Juicy represented not only Trinidad and Tobago at The Voice UK, but the entire Caribbean, showcasing our culture and the vibes. He performed his own original song, Obia. Let's take a look at this.
She driving me mad, she driving me crazy. I don't understand this, but that is my baby, yeah. Obia, 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 Obia. Check it, I buy it, she this, I buy it, she that. Is she the best and all that I've got? She giving me bun when I turn my back. Begging you, please, I want you to stop. Girl, you taking this thing overboard. The scent of your cologne sit on my clothes. Telling your friends it does give me blows. But behind, nobody know, no. She driving me mad. Yeah, she driving me crazy. I don't understand this, but that is my... So we sing, Obia, 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 Obia. Here I just put my hands on my head and follow. Obia, 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 Obia. Check it, I'm tired of the pain, the constant violation. This relationship has to done. Everywhere I look, I turn for a solution. My God, there's nowhere to run. Everybody, put your hand up in the air right now. Time to party, hand up in the air. 1, 2, everybody, wave one, jump and sing. Obia. No matter what, I just put up my hand on my head and follow.
And that's our broadcast for this edition of the program AM Prime. We tell you as always, you can keep in touch with us here at WESNCC on all our social media platforms. At the top of the hour, we have news, followed by today's edition of Talking Point with Shah and Small. But for here, for now, I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
WESN.
Secret Side Girls RC School presents Wonderland, a bazaar with a difference.
Saturday, November 5th, St. John's Ambulance Headquarters, Ryson Road, Port of Spain, 12 noon to 6 p.m. Many exciting stalls and much more. Walk along Adult Street and win many prizes from adult punchboard, hoopla, tin pan alley, and much more. Don't miss the many giveaways and surprises for all kids. Kids, are you ready for face painting, sweet parang, DJ music, Santa workshop, kids corner, dunk tank, wheel of fortune, and so much more? Saturday, November 5th, St. John's Ambulance Headquarters, Ryson Road, Port of Spain, comes alive, 12 noon to 6 p.m.
Wonderland!
I'm Keaton Shaw, and we are WESN, the content capital. What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.